Anyone who intends to testify, please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? State, I do. When you come up to testify, and please state your full name, address, and affirm that you've been sworn in. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Board of Zoning Appeals members. Thanks for your participation and coming out on this first meeting of the 2025 year. So we're going to have a couple new cases. Both of those are related to the property that is owned by Nissan North, but they are separate parcels. So you've probably already noticed that they will be done as two separate cases corresponding to those parcels. And then after the items of new business, we will be doing a training, and it's great to see an alternate as well here tonight. I think the training will be a wonderful session. It's an excellent opportunity to ask questions if you've prepared those or think of those between now and the start of the training. And it will also involve a presentation. Our Township legal representative, Julie Donnan, will be present. She'll be arriving here within the hour to lead that portion of the meeting. So you have that to look forward to here in just a little bit. All right, well, I think that with this being a New Year meeting, technically the first item of business is going to be the election of the chair and the vice chair. So I'm not sure if you wanted to have any discussion amongst yourselves, but your next, again, decision is to elect the chair and the vice chair. You can take it away, Kelvin, with the discussion.
Is there any nominations for chair?
We have a new member.
Well, yes,
Maybe
we
we
should.
should let
Sure.
him introduce himself.
Let me bring our new member into the fold.
Thank
Thank you. That helps. Certainly. This is Nicholas McCoy. Nicholas is our new regular member. We apologize. We're still working on his name tag, but we do promise to have that here in the next meeting. But Nicholas McCoy, thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, please refer to me as Nick, otherwise I'll think you're my mother and I'm 6 again.
It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for being here.
Do we need to do roll call before?
Sure, let's take
Nominations.
roll. Yep, I'm going to go ahead. All right, Mr. Trebs,
Here?
Mrs. Ross,
Here.
Ms. Neff,
Here.
Mr. Pax,
Here.
and Mr. McCoy.
Here.
Great. All right, so now we are back to the chair vote discussion.
Doing this again. I nominate Mr. Trebs as the chairman for 2025.
Second?
All right. So motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Trebs.
I'll abstain.
You can certainly abstain. Mr. Pax
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we move on to the vice chair.
I'd make a motion for Sue Neff to be, Sue Ross, excuse me.
You to combine us into one
Yeah, it's
person.
into one person. Sue Ross, excuse me, for vice chair
Great.
for 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Pax, seconded by Ms. Ross. Those voting, Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Abstain.
abstain. Mr. Trebs,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
All right. Well, congratulations. I'm going to make one small change. I notice we're short a microphone here, so sorry about that, Mr. Pax.
Thanks.
All right, so one item down, we'll move into the first case for the evening. That is, as mentioned, at the Nissan North site. And then specifically, this property is located at 8600 North High Street. This property, well, I should state for the description, the applicant is seeking 4 area variances from the Orange Township zoning resolution to allow for 4 wall signs to be above the allowed 15 feet, 3 area variances to allow for electronic messaging signs, 1 conditional use to allow for a freestanding sign, and 3 area variances to allow for a freestanding sign to exceed the maximum allowed height and display area. The subject property is owned by Nissan North, Inc., and was previously the location for Columbus Mitsubishi North. An exterior modifications permit, number 2024-0486, was approved on December 13th, 2024, for the site to undergo changes, including a modified parking area and a 3,400 square foot building addition, as well as material updates to the exterior. So, for the surrounding area, to the north, the zoning designation is incorporated area in the city of Columbus. The land use includes commercial use, which is Pet Suites Worthington. To the south, it's also the city of Columbus incorporated, and the land use is multifamily residential. To the east, it's also city of Columbus incorporated area. The land use is single-family residences, and to the west, the zoning is planned commercial and office district, so within Orange Township jurisdiction, and the land use is Nissan North, which is existing dealership, as well as the US 23 right-of-way. So here's the close-in view, which gives you an idea of those varying land uses on the 3 sides. US 23 to the left, and I should say to the west, and then we'll go to the zoomed out aerial, and you can get a good idea of the city of Columbus bordering on those 3 sides, and you can see the larger property immediately to the west, which is also Nissan North owned. Next portion is the staff review for conditional use. I will allow you to refer to some of this text on the page, and I will move down to the criteria that we found most applicable. So that starts with criteria number 3, a determination that the proposed sign meets all of the following requirements. Subsection A, the sign is a monument freestanding sign. The applicant is proposing a monument-style freestanding sign as shown in Exhibit 1 below. Subsection B, the maximum height of such sign does not exceed 8 feet above the average grade of the site, and the sign is located at the distance from any street right-of-way line as required. According to Exhibit 1, the proposed sign will be 30 feet above grade. The sign is proposed to be set back 48 feet 8 inches from the property line adjoining the right-of-way of US 23. The sign exceeds the required height by 22 feet 0 inches, and a variance is requested. Subsection C, the sign does not have more than 2 sides or surfaces. The sign as proposed will have 2 sides. For D, the display area of any one side or surface does not exceed 1/2 of the total display area permitted. The single sign face totals approximately 99 4/10 square feet, when only 64 square feet per face is permitted, so a variance is requested. For E, the total display area of all surfaces does not exceed 32 square feet, or a maximum of 16 square feet per side or surface when the sign is located 15 feet from the primary frontage street right-of-way line. For each additional 1 foot setback from the street right-of-way line, an additional 8 square feet of total display area, or maximum of 4 square feet per side or surface, will be permitted up to a maximum of 128 square feet of total display area, or a maximum of 64 square feet per side or surface as permitted. The proposed 2-sided sign will total approximately 198 8/10 square feet. The sign will be set back 48 feet from the right-of-way along US 23, so only 64 square feet per side is permitted. That means a variance is being requested here. Down to G, no part of such sign will be closer to any street right-of-way line than 15 feet, nor closer to any property line than the applicable building setback line if the adjoining property is in a residential district. The proposed sign will be set back 48 feet from the street right-of-way line, which meets the standard. We'll move along. That is the extent of our responses in that conditional use 22.04A. We will direct your attention to a few exhibits. They are all taken out of the applicant's materials. So this is Exhibit 1, which includes a measurement from using our engineering software Bluebeam, and we were able to come up with a measurement from the edge of the right-of-way to where the proposed sign would be, which is 48 feet and 8 inches. So you heard that described a couple times in the previous section. Moving on to Exhibit 2, this is the monument sign that is being proposed. It is being proposed to replace that smaller existing sign. So you can refer to that. All right, so we're going to move along from the conditional use review to the variances review. This does include a number of variances. And again, this is for the monument sign. So the first variance would be the sign height. It is a variance from section 22.04A3B. So the text here states, the maximum height of such sign does not exceed 8 feet above the average grade of the site, and the sign is located at the distance from any street right-of-way line as required. The proposed sign would have a height of 30 feet 0 inches, which exceeds the requirement by 22 feet 0 inches. This is roughly, and again, the math is a little bit different here, but you generally like to see the percentage requests. So this is roughly a 275% variance request from section 22.04A3B. For the next variance, this section is the sign display area. The variance is from section 22.04A3D. The display area of any one side or surface does not exceed 1/2 the total area, the total display area permitted. The single sign face totals approximately 99 4/10 square feet, when only 64 square feet per face is permitted. This is a roughly 155% variance request from section 22.04A3D. For the sign display area, that is the third variance to this sign. That is a variance from section 22.04A3E. And I will allow you to refer to that text, which we had previously described in the conditional use section, but essentially that the two sides may only total up to 128 square feet. The proposed two-sided sign will be approximately 198 8/10 square feet, or 198.8 square feet. The sign will be set back 48 feet and specifically 8 inches, from the right-of-way along US 23, so only 64 square feet total per side is permitted. This is a roughly 155% variance request from section 22.04A3D, or A3E, apologies. Okay, so now we will move along from the monument sign to the wall sign review. This is a staff review of, again, the 4 permanent wall signs. We'll start with, and all of these are facing the west side. When we describe the signs, we're generally referring to the letters, the lettering on them. So for Exhibit 2, that's wall sign A, the north lettering. We did run this through Bluebeam as well to get exact measurements for the heights. And so this is an area variance from 22.03. The 22.03 states, and I'll jump down a little bit, such signs shall be located on or along a wall of such building which faces a street, parking lot, or service drive, and shall be located no more than 15 feet above finished grade, or the height of the ceiling of the first floor of the building, whichever is less. So Bluebeam measurement is 23 feet and 1/2 inches. The applicant is proposing wall sign A to be placed at a height of 23 feet and 1/2 inches. A variance of 8 feet and 1/2 inches is being requested. This represents a roughly 53% variance request from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22.03. For the second of the 4 wall signs. That's wall sign, we're characterizing a wall sign B. It's a Nissan logo. And then that wall sign, the applicant is proposing to be placed at 25 feet and 0 inches. A variance of 7 feet and 5 inches is being requested. This represents a roughly 49% variance request from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22. All right. Next sign is wall sign C with Nissan lettering, and that is blue beam measured at 23 feet and 5 inches. So the applicant is proposing wall sign C to be placed at a height of 23 feet 5 inches. Variance of 8 feet 5 inches is being requested. This represents roughly 56% variance request from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22. And we're on the 4th of the wall signs, a wall sign D that has the service lettering. The blue beam measurement here was 22 feet 11 inches. The applicant is proposing that wall sign D to be placed at a height of 22 feet and 11 inches. A variance of 7 feet 11 inches is being requested. This represents roughly 53% variance request from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22. Exhibit 6 is just informational, so you could visualize all of the signs on the building front together. All right, so we're through most of the variance requests. The last 3 pertain to 3 electronic message board signs. They are mounted to the wall or proposed to be mounted to the wall, but they have that LED component where they could be programmed to basically provide a number of whatever needs to be shown with, it looks like with regard to direction in this case, because they are located above the future garage door egress points. So for this, it is an area variance from section 22.05, prohibited signs. Following sign, so this describes that the following sign shall be prohibited in Orange Township, and in subsection B, signs not otherwise specifically authorized by this resolution. So an EMC is not authorized specifically by the zoning resolution. The applicant proposing electronic message center, this is the first of the 3. On the left side, I did put those red circles for your familiarity, but you can make that out over the garage door entrance, and it does not comply with the above referenced zoning text. Moving on to the center located one, it's the same essentially here. The applicant proposing electronic message center in the center, which is circled, to be added to the west facade, and it does not comply with the above referenced zoning text. And finally, the right located one above the right garage, the applicant is proposing electronic message center on the right side, which is circled, to be added to the west facade, and it does not comply with the above referenced zoning text. There's on the next page, again, informational, gives you a general idea of what these signs may look like when they're rendering their graphics. All right, and Exhibit 9 is a summary of actually both properties, but we included it because it describes some of the differences between existing signs on site and the area of those, as well as the proposed signs. And the applicant may be going into some more detail on this if you have any questions. All right, that does it for the staff review. The next text relates to the conditional use board analysis and possible motions, and then after that, the area variance board analysis and possible motions.
Applicant would like to talk with us? Yeah. Is he going to need a mic?
Oh, yep, I need to get them. I still don't have the muscle memory. There you go.
Eric, do we need to share a mic?
If you wouldn't mind going back and forth.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. You talk, grab my mic. Well, it
I'll
has
share
to
mine.
pick up for the stream.
I'm pretty loud.
That's all right, I'm good. I'm not, but anyway. My name is John Oney. I have been sworn in. My address is 49 East 3rd Street, Columbus, Ohio. So thank you for having us tonight. I know we've got a very lengthy presentation, and thanks for allowing us to speak before we go into the discussion of the motions. But we thought it very important to go over our comprehensive plan for both sides of the street, for both the buildings and the signage, to kind of unify everything. I do have with me tonight, I would say, first of all, I've been in the business 45 years as an architect, done a lot of projects in Orange Township, and a lot with Tom Carpenter Nissan North. And it's been a pleasure to see both of you grow in a very first-class way. From when I drove up, I go north to Lake Erie every weekend, and to see this corridor grow, it's certainly wonderful things what you've done, so thank you. So Tom Carpenter is the owner of Nissan North. During his 42 years of ownership, the dealership has grown into a most successful and long-lasting business. I think it's truly an anchor in southern Orange Township. I also have Steve Busco with me from Random Sign Company, who helped prepare this application, and I would like to apologize for the lengthy application, but we felt it necessary to include everything we might discuss tonight. We do feel we have special conditions that exist for the variance approval. We think our situation is unique due to our longevity and our current grandfathered signs. We realize that this is a big ask, but we feel that the special conditions exist that warrant your consideration. Most importantly, we feel strongly that we are not creating an unwanted precedent, but rather bringing it to the table a win-win solution for all the parties. Just a brief description of the Nissan North's history. It's been at this location for over 50 years. It's consistently one of the top volume dealers in the United States Central region of the Nissan dealers. And just for Tom personally, he's been owner for 42 years, and he's taken, I think, a real leap of faith in a $5 million expansion to upgrade and make this more friendly for customers to really succeed in this location for the next 50 years. We do have a couple goals, and I'll get to, we do have a few slides. Oh, you already got them up. That's good. That's all right. We'll get through it. Comprehensive goals, number one. The first one's dealt with the campus and the architecture of the buildings. We've got, if you go back to the site plan slides, first ones, just that is our site. Go right there. Our comprehensive plan is to deal with both sides of the street, and then there was a Mitsubishi deal there for a while after the Saturn stores were. Tom had 3 Saturn stores, and I don't want to say they threw him under the bus, but he invested a lot, and it in the end it didn't work. So we tried Mitsubishi dealerships. That was good for a while, but in the main picture, the aircraft carrier, we feel it's always been there is the Nissan store. So the comprehensive plan is to move the Nissan store, the old dated building, from the west side to the east side, and the bones of the Saturn store are very good, and we're renovating that into the new dealership and service center. The west side of the street would become the pre-owned sales center. There's obviously, I think, the body shop still is on that side as well, but we would be renovating both the buildings for Nissan. So it's 10 acres, it's 5 acres a side. We actually have 370 foot of frontage on the east side, and I think 610 feet of frontage on the west. 1,000 square feet of frontage is what we control, and we really want to clean that up to unify it. The site location, just if you go to the other side real quick, and I know we touched on this, go back there. the east side's been gobbled up by Columbus. We're still in Orange Township and wish to stay there. But we're kind of on an island there on the east side. And we've got other constraints that, fortunately with the city of Columbus with less restrictions, have entered into our contiguous areas around there. On the next slide, kind of again shows your zoning map. Our sites are really on the southern tip of Orange Township, and I think we've demonstrated we've been a pretty nice anchor there to stay in Orange for the last 50 years, and that's our intent to stay there as well. But we are, gobbled up by the Metro Park, and then to the east, all of the city of Columbus. So back to our plans for the dealership. If we go back to the elevation slides keep going, Eric. So on the east side, this was the old Saturn store. Our plans are to get rid of the 20 by 50 foot, they call it a porte-cochere, but the canopy that some guy had a strange idea that would be nice to walk under, but it's really kind of an entry piece, but I don't know what good it does. We're going to get rid of that and get rid of to the left there, the 20 by 20 delivery module, and we're going to create a new showroom extension that will bump out 30 feet and get rid of really the eaves, the old glass, those porte-cocheres, all that stuff out front. And if you go to the next slide, you'll kind of see what that new version is really just a very clean, simple look. Nice showroom glass, everyone with the volume they do, it's 200 feet back, so we really do need, from the right-of-way, so we do need a presence to have nice showroom glass. To the left's the new car delivery center, where you see the red tablet directs people to the entry, and you can barely see the service to the right, which again, that's a little more than 200 feet back, which is why we really need to direct those people once they get into the site. So on the next side, this is the current dealership on the west side of the street. Our intent, I think there's 9 building signs, with 7 in this building and 2 on the existing pre-owned building. We're reducing that to 2. There's 3 pylon signs. You see the one there that's been there for a long time, and there's 2 more. But the new elevations of the building, if you go to the next slide, there's the old kind of cluttered 3 different appearances of sign. We're going down to 2. No really huge dramatic entry piece that you see on the right, but just a very clean stated thing that the architecture, the materials, and the signage all is meant to be consistent with the new dealership to the east, so it really is unified. Getting to our sign plans, we think we've cleaned the buildings up, and we really think it's important. If we might go to the next screen. Obviously, maybe you all remember this sign. I'm old enough to remember all of them. It was Ryan Motors, then it was Datsun, then it was 3 different versions of Nissan. I think that goes down even more. I think there's one more view on there as well, to where it currently is today. So that's there, along with 2 other signs that are further north on the dealership. We really feel to promote US 23 is obviously we're on that. It's got, according to ODOT, 53,000 daily trips. We got fine lanes of traffic. It's very congested. That stuff's moving at 50 to 60 miles an hour. And it's really important for us our challenge is to really early on in that environment to see where you're going. And if we kind of leave and reface the signs to the west, the new dealerships to the east, people are going to turn in the wrong way. And then they're going to cross 5 lanes of traffic. And a concern of ours is to totally avoid that. So we're we're offering to really remove all of those signs, all three, especially at 51, and make a lower sign. We also feel it's important on the east side to make a sign a little more prominent, because that's the main dealership. And I drive that so often that there's a need to identify it early. Our building's 200 feet back, and the building signs aren't really good. You're not going to see it. It's up to that pylon sign. So that's just kind of the sign history. This is what we were proposing. It is taller than the existing 17-foot sign that's there. But our proposals are to make this 30. If you look at the night picture as well, it's only that top piece is illuminated. You know, all the signs we saw in most of these auto deals, they're very big letters, very big logos. This logo and lettering is just very understated. It's kind of like the Coke can. It's very subtle, but it's very effective. So that's the signs on both sides of the street. Simplified look, small letters, small logos. So to look at really what we have, we've done 4 street view signs. This is looking northbound, where you see on the left the pylon sign. There's 2 other signs further north. You can see the pre-owned building, or the proposed pre-owned building, but really the main dealership is lost. It's not there. All you have is the pylon sign there. You go to the next slide. This again just shows you that, I guess, the cluttered look of that existing building, where there's signs on both sides of the building plus the front. I think there's 7 signs in that building, and we're going down to 2. And that pylon sign, again, we feel that will be leaving. One more slide. Those 2 signs will be gone totally, and we will again go from 3 to 1 pylon sign on this site. And the last slide I've got is really just, this is really more of a concern even for us. Heading south, southbound, you see the pet signs. That's in the city. That's 100 and I think 68 square feet. It's 25 foot tall. You see the mature trees. We have both on north and south, but it's really difficult, even with a 17-foot pylon sign, to identify the main dealership, because you can't see it. So heading there, where our concern is to get rid of the big sign on the west that you see sticking up in the air, make that a sign, and then have a little higher sign on the east to make sure that's identified as the main dealership. So that's kind of a comprehensive plan of how we want to make this for the next 50 years. I'd just like to say our firm's done architecture or auto dealerships almost 95% in the region. It's kind of what we've done for 45 years. And Tom, we've always done a lot of projects with him, and I'd just like to say all the auto dealerships or dealers I work with, he's one of the most trustworthy, respected people I've dealt with. So it's fun to work with him. So Tom's here tonight. He's up from Kentucky tonight, and he'd like to say a few words or comments before we get into the discussion. I'm sorry it's been so lengthy, but we felt it need to give you a comprehensive view. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Carpenter, and my address is 8600 North High Street, and I affirm that I have been sworn in. I am the original owner of Nissan North. We purchased the dealership in 1983, and I'm proud to say that I've been a part of the Orange Township business community now for 42 years. As John said, we know this is a big ask, and for this board to approve. I believe the circumstances in our case are unique, and your approval will not set an unwarranted precedent. Here are my reasons. Number one, our business has been operating at this location for over 50 years. Our existing freestanding signs have been grandfathered over time and therefore are legally permitted. Number two, during my ownership, our business has expanded to both sides of Route 23, and we now encompass a total of 15 acres because we have the property to the south of the Nissan dealership on the west side of the street as well. Number three, during this time, the city of Columbus has encroached upon Delaware County to the point that we are almost surrounded by the city on our east side. Virtually, our parcel on the east side is surrounded on three sides. And up to this point, the annexation into the city of Columbus has been stopped by Route 23 to the west. And it is our intention, we do not want to leave Orange Township. Number four, our business pays a substantial amount of real estate taxes every year. In fact, in 2023, we paid over $215,000 to Delaware County for our 15 acres of land and buildings. And this expansion will actually make that amount much higher in the future. Number five, we need these signs to identify our business and direct our customers clearly and safely. And this plan, we feel, will actually accomplish that goal and result in fewer signs and be much more visually attractive. And finally, we want this $5 million expansion to be the standard for the next 50 years and to anchor us firmly in Orange Township's future growth. I thank you very much for your consideration, and again, I'd like John to apologize it's so lengthy, but it really had to be to do it all in one package. And I encourage you to ask any questions for either of us, and we'll try to address any of the concerns that you may have. Thank you very much.
If I could, I have one last thing to add. Eric, if you could put up, oh, you have it on the screen. So we did a sign comparison of what we have. And the item number one you see there is the existing pylon signs of what heights are existing, what areas are existing. Then we did the proposed signs, what heights are existing, what areas are existing. I see on your sheet under the Nissan pre-owned proposed height, it's not there. It should be set 30 and 25 feet. I don't see 25 on there. I left that off. So item three really gives us a comparison of what we have now and what we'd like to propose at the end of our comprehensive plan. The number of signs would be reduced 50%. The maximum sign height will be decreased 42%. The combined sign height of all the signs will be decreased 48%. The maximum sign area will be decreased 34%. And the combined sign area will be reduced 49%. In addition, I believe we're allowed 3 square feet of total property signs for each linear feet that we have. On the east side, we have a 110 or 1,100 square feet allowed. We're proposing 372 total of all exterior signs, to 67% reduction in what's allowed by code. On the west side, we have 610 linear feet, so that gives us 1,830 square feet of allowable total signs. We're proposing a 92% reduction on the Nissan building. There is a Crash Champion sign there. I think it's about 150 square feet. So we'd do maybe an 84% reduction of what's allowed. So both pylon signs and building signs, from what we got today to what we're asking, we do need variances to achieve this, and I think we've tried to give you reasons that we feel are appropriate. But it's a significant reduction, and it does meet our needs, and I think unifies everything. So, thank you. And we'll answer any questions, Tom and I.
couple of questions, but one's kind of a side question. It's not really related directly to my decision, but I love that you have the 50-year plan with the campus in mind. Do you foresee, I believe, I might be wrong, but I thought I heard Nissan Honda have some stuff going on. Do you foresee any changes over the next couple of years in needs for signage or adjustments to that as a result of those relationship changes?
Actually, we hope that does go through, because that'll help both manufacturers in a lot of ways. But they've made it the point clear, and this would take probably 3 years before it would be even finalized. But they, especially in the United States, which is their primary market, they're both, worldwide companies, but they will not do anything to disrupt the current dealer network. Especially Honda is so strong in this market with the manufacturing plant, and that is part of the agreement that they will still. What they'll utilize is their research development, share some certain things amongst them, but the brands will be left intact as we understand it.
Okay, so no additional changes on the horizon. That's helpful. Thank you.
No, ma'am.
And then my other question was, looking at Exhibit 2, this sign. I agree, I travel that road every day, agree with the need for some signage, especially when you're going south to see that, but it looks really bright with that red. We have a new business up north off of 23 with some red lights, and it's very jarring. I'm just curious, your thoughts on that, because that's illuminated at night, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure about operation and hours and time and time clocks. But hours of operation, when they're not open, I'm not sure if those could be dimmed or not available, but certainly we need them on in the hours of operation. But again, it's bright, but only the top portion that's illuminated. It's not all the way up in the ground where you see that, the whole pole going up in the air, I guess.
The one clarification I wanted to make on our question, the west side property, the two signs that were there for the used lots, those will be removed?
Yes.
That's correct. And then the one large monumental, is there any monument signs at all going to be installed on the west side, or
There'd be one monument sign.
one monument sign?
Where the 51-foot tall sign is now,
Yes.
directly where the new pre-owned dealership will be, it'll be in front of the pre-owned. So that'll be how we identify the pre-owned building. It'll be one.
And I know,
Thank you. I missed that when
Yep.
I'm looking through the graphics. I was trying to determine
Yeah.
that.
understood. And that in particular will be discussed in the second case. I did want to make a
Okay.
clarification that that's on the other parcel. You haven't heard that staff report yet, so that will be discussed here in the next case.
Frankly, that just helps me in my disposition of this case and consideration of the building being back. What the existing conditions are on the west impact at least my interpretation on it. So it's kind of, I'm evaluating my response to this application based upon that. There's a bit of a predicate there that influences my, at least the experience going down 23 with the signs that are being removed and what's being proposed in relation to this 30-foot monument sign.
Are we allowed to hear the second one, or do we need to make a decision on the first one before we hear the second one? We always ask you tricky questions.
Sure, yeah,
Eric.
that one's not an everyday, this is not an everyday situation, of course, with two separate parcels, but similar campus, or the same campus, rather. We will need to make decisions on the variances, but the possibility for the applicant to request continuances on any of the variances, that's there. That would be up to them to decide if they wanted to request those continuances, if they felt like you as a board were not willing to move forward with any of the approvals. So ultimately, that's up to them to request those continuances, but since the order of the cases is set, I don't think we would have the ability to go back in time and start talking about the second case before we decided on those variances before you.
So are you saying we could continue the first case till we hear the second case and then decide on both? Or was that what you were implying? Or
No, the
No.
continuance takes place to a
At the-
future meeting, a
Oh,
subsequent
okay, okay.
meeting.
That's-
Now, if we wanted to just
Okay,
hold
I'm
that
sorry,
thought, we
expert.
do have the benefit of having Julie Donnan
Yay.
amongst us. So if Julie, you wanted to add anything to what I just said, please feel free.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Julie Donnan with Brochus Johnson and Greg's legal counsel for the township. I'm here for the training, but walked in, and this seems like a possible question. Just so I'm up to speed, it sounds like you have two cases before you, same applicant,
Yes.
but different variances.
But different sides of the road.
Different
Yeah,
sides
yeah.
of the road, okay. So it is, I mean, it is not uncommon, and quite frankly, it's in the case of efficiency, to basically you can hear both almost at the same time. It sounds like you may have some questions related, they kind of are intertwined. You would have to render separate decisions, but if it sounds like the applicant has kind of made their way through the first application, if you want them to move through the second application, that would be fine. And then the board can then make decisions separately on both of those. So I hope that's helpful.
Can we do that?
I don't know if this is appropriate, but we'd be willing to, if discussions are mainly on the pylon signs, we'd certainly be willing to maybe table them and make motions on the other things and come back to that after those decisions, if that would help people. We would like to hopefully gain approval tonight and not do continuations. We're underway. We're gone. And, spring, early fall is the time to do this. So we do everything we can that's within your rules and procedure to keep this thing moving.
Yeah, I think we just want to hear the second.
Julie, we could just hear the second staff report at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that takes care of it.
Yeah, I think that like.
Can I ask a definition question to the gentleman here first? Sir, when you talk about your sign comparison, that chart that you have, that sign comparison chart, if I'm not incorrect here, is the same in both variance applications, correct? It's covering both properties? on both
Yes,
sides of
I
the road?
totaled both east and west existing and proposed.
And when you refer to a monument sign, you're talking about the block?
That's correct.
Monolith is sort of
The-
what
the-
I see.
Yes.
And a pylon sign is a pole,
No, we don't have
or
poles.
no?
I'm sorry. It's a monument. Those are, what I call pylons are those.
Okay,
They're-
those, okay.
Yes, and the two that we've proposed, there's only two. They both are that design that Stacy just held up. One's 30 feet, one's 25 foot.
But they look exactly the same thing?
Yes, correct.
Okay, except one probably says pre-owned.
Yes.
Does it actually say I think they're
Or does it?
exactly the same,
Well-
are they not?
It's just the same.
Same small?
Looking at the graphics, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's
And
correct.
then on the one we're talking about, we're on the east side of 23, the old Saturn Mitsubishi dealership. The Mitsubishi sign is a sign shaped
It's similar,
similar to these, but smaller.
yes, but less height, yes.
Less
I think it's 17 feet, 10 inches, if I recall correctly.
And then the Nissan signs on the west side are poles signs.
Yes,
Okay, yep, okay.
3 pole
I
signs.
just, I'm very visual.
Yeah.
So but I appreciate your presentation being very visual for me to understand what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question just for the audience. Is there anybody else that wishes to talk on this topic?
I just wasn't sure that was the same.
Okay.
Sure.
Then we'll go ahead and proceed with the staff report on that, because there are some similarities.
Yeah, we have the clarification now that we can do the variances in one piece, so quite useful. And I will take it from the top of the second staff report. So this description, this is for the west parcel, which is located at 10140 Columbus Pike. This lot size, approximately 5.57 acres, the zoning planned commercial office district. For the description, seeking 2 area variances from the Orange Township zoning resolution to allow for 2 wall signs above the allowed 15 feet 0 inches, and 1 conditional use to allow for a freestanding sign, and also 3 area variances to allow for a freestanding sign to exceed the maximum allowed height and display area. Subject property is owned by Nissan North, includes multiple commercial buildings for new car sales currently, as well as an auto body repair and used car sales. Surrounding area, I'll go through this quickly. Looking to the north, the zoning district is farm residential district. The land use is single-family residences, and I think that should be singular. That's a single-family residence on a large parcel. Direction to the south, the zoning is open space and parkland owned by Metro Parks, as well as planned commercial and office district, even further to the south. This land use includes, like I mentioned, Columbus, Franklin County Metro Parks land and a commercial use. To the east, the zoning district is planned commercial and office district. That is car dealership land. As was described, it's undergoing those site changes and improvements and had that exterior modifications permit granted in December. And to the west is the planned commercial and office district with various commercial uses there. All right, so the aerial view, we're switching our attention slightly to the west, on the west side of US 23 now, with the site as I had described it. Several buildings, including auto body repair to the north, the existing new car dealer on the south side with the 10140, and that smaller building is, I believe, for used car sales. We'll go to the zoomed out view. There's that parcel highlighted for your clarification. Okay, just like the last staff report, we'll start with the conditional use section and move along from there. Just like before, I'll jump to section 3, subsection A. The sign is a monument-style freestanding sign. The applicant is proposing a monument-style freestanding sign as shown in Exhibit 1 below. Or B, the maximum height of such sign does not exceed 8 feet above the average grade of the site, and the sign is located at the distance from any street right-of-way line as required. According to Exhibit 1 and 2, the proposed sign will be 25 feet 0 inches above grade. The sign is proposed to be set back 37 feet 1 inch from the property line adjoining the right-of-way of US 23. The sign exceeds the required height by 17 feet and 0 inches. And it's actually, I should modify it, 17 feet and 1 inch. Okay. No, I do need to make a correction. I think I was referring to the setback. So it should be, it exceeds the required height by 10 feet and 0 inches. I do apologize, but that's a 25-foot height. If, yes, 25 feet proposed height. My math might be off. 25. Oh, I came full circle with that. The maximum height that they are allowed is 8 feet. So I did get it correct. It's 17 feet and 0 inches that they are requesting the variance for. And I apologize, but that 17 feet and 0 inches is correct. Sorry about that. The sign for section C, the sign does not have more than 2 sides or surfaces. The sign, as proposed, will have 2 sides as shown. All right. For subsection D, the display area of any one side or surface does not exceed 1/2 of the total display area permitted. The single sign face total is approximately 69 square feet, when only 64 square feet per face is permitted. That is a variance request right there, just a slight variance request of 5 square feet. This is a little bit larger text, like you saw in the last report, but to summarize, the maximum permitted area for both sides of the sign is 128 square feet. The proposed two-sided sign will approximately total 138 square feet. That's for both sides. The proposed sign will be set back 37 feet and 1 inch from the right-of-way line of US 23, so 128 square feet total is permitted. The sign does not meet this standard and variance is requested. Subsection G, no part of such sign will be closer to any street right-of-way line than 15 feet, nor closer to any other property line than the applicable building setback line if the adjoining property is in a residential district. The proposed sign will be set back 37 feet and 1 inch. So that meets the standard. All right, and that is all of the responses for the conditional use section. Like we did for in the last staff report, we ran through and took measurements specific to each of these requests. I wanted to demonstrate, it might be a little bit difficult based on the ink, but that shows, if you look closely, the 37 feet and 1 inch setback from the edge of the right-of-way to the proposed monument sign. And this is informational in Exhibit 2 from the applicant's materials, which we had previously discussed, but I wanted to ensure that you could reference the existing sign next to the proposed sign. Exhibit 3. Correction. We'll move into the variance request for the monument sign. So the sign height, the variance from section 22.04A3B, just to remind you, the maximum height of monument sign in the township is 8 feet above finished grade, and the sign is located at the distance away from any street right-of-way line as required. The proposed sign would have a height of 25 feet 0 inches, which exceeds the requirement by 17 feet and 0 inches. This is roughly 260% variance request from 22.04A3B. The next variance is for the sign display area, the variance being specifically from 22.04A3D. The display area of any one side or surface does not exceed 1/2 of the total display area permitted. The single sign face totals approximately 69 square feet, when only 64 square feet per face is permitted. This is roughly 107% variance request from section 22.04 AD. For the sign display area, the total display area of all sign or surfaces shall not exceed 32 square feet or a maximum of 16 square feet per side per surface when the sign is located 15 feet from the primary frontage street right-of-way line. For each additional 1 foot setback from the street right-of-way line, an additional 8 square feet of total display area or maximum of 4 square feet per side or surface will be permitted up to a maximum of 128 square feet of total display area or a maximum of 64 square feet per side or surface as permitted. The proposed two-sided sign will total approximately 138 square feet. The sign will be set back 37 feet and 1 inch from the right-of-way line along US 23, so only 64 square feet per side is permitted. This is roughly 107% variance request from 22.04 AD. Okay. And we're on to the final 2 requests, which is for the new wall signs. So proposed wall sign A with the Nissan lettering, we took the measurement, and that was 18 feet and 0 inches. Just to summarize, the applicant is proposing wall sign A to be placed at 18 feet and 0 inches above grade. A variance of 3 feet, 0 inches is being requested. This represents a 20% variance request from Orange Township Zoning Resolution, Section 22. Okay, and moving on, the next sign would be wall sign B certified pre-owned lettering, and our Bluebeam measurement, that was 17 feet and 1 inch. The applicant is proposing wall sign A to be placed at a height of 17 feet 1 inches. Variance of 2 feet 1 inches is being requested. This represents a roughly 14% variance request from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22. And this diagram here is for comparison or to see the entire proposed front facade. All right. Exhibit 6, we've seen this sign summary table, and the applicant had touched on that, of course. That is the extent of the staff report. So you can refer to the board analysis and example motions in the pages that follow.
Thank you.
I have several questions. In looking, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for updating these buildings. I think they look lovely. I think the fact that they look like each other will be helpful to people who go through this corridor and use your services. And I just appreciate that. You want to stay in Orange Township. We want you here. As far as the very tall monument signs go, when I look at, you had an exhibit where you showed the Pet Palace or whatever it is, and then looked southbound on 23 Columbus Pike, and you can't see your sign down there. Part of that, in my way of thinking, is it's white or silver, and it blends in with everything. It's still tall, it's still wide, but it's not noticeable. I think the red of your logo helps that immediately. It's also so far back from the road, it's in the parking lot, both sides. It's in the parking lot of your businesses, and I think that's kind of confusing as just looking at all of these different examples. When you're looking for something along the road, you're usually looking for a monument sign along the road, not within the parking lot. I'm just assuming that you're placing it in exactly the same place because your electric is there and because that's where you want the sign. So that's my one question, is that why you want it placed in exactly the same place? They're rather wide signs at the base, wide enough for a car to hide behind. And so I was wondering if you'd considered the safety of having such a wide sign in your parking lot. And I had another thought. You said that they're exactly the same sign on each side of the street, only one is taller than the other. And my question is, in your application, you said that you want it so that it's very clear to people which side of the road is your new sales and which side is your pre-owned sales. And there is nothing on these signs that helps me as a consumer when I'm driving down the street to know which side I want to go to. And so I was wondering if that was something that you had considered. Because that is, if you're on one side of the road and you need to be on the other side of the road to get to if you're on the used side and you need to get to the new side, you're taking your life in your hands. And I know you don't, according to your application, it doesn't sound like you want that problem.
We couldn't agree more. As far as the red, I think that will make it more visible because it's kind of lost in there. And I think from both sides of the road, the red makes us identify that easier. The reason we placed the east side where the current monument sign is because it is back far enough, 48 feet, where cars can pull up into the sight triangle that's open and exit, and they don't have a car blocking, or the sign doesn't block what that view would be, because that traffic's moving fast. So it's 48 feet, 8 inches back. So although you don't see it as good, we think with the height and the red at that location, it's going to be at that distance back, it leaves for safe exit because of the site triangle, and we'll be able to identify it as we want. We want to identify, and I think, we don't know this with Nissan, but we want to pursue it. On the, where you have the red triangle, or the rectangle, there's the first blade below that, I think they'd allow us to do pre-owned, on the pre-owned sign. And we don't have an answer from them, but would be our preference, because then you do have, you can't see the buildings, you're moving too fast. And having a little higher sign, more prominent on the east, and if we could add that little pre-owned strip to the one on the west, I think that would be our ultimate goal. I just don't know if we can do it yet, because we don't have, these sign people, you gotta buy their sign, pay it for your lifetime, and but if that could be a condition, maybe that would help us to get them to say,
Okay.
let's do that.
And the same on the west side of the street, you're placing in the same place because that's where your utilities are and.
Well, both sides, yes, that's another point. That's where the current conduits are run to. We could move it, I mean, if that's your discussion, I just think it's in a good place because we can't move it closer to the street. And if you move it back too far, we get you get your transports coming in there and we do the whole lap around here.
I know that's a problem
Yeah.
there for you guys anyway.
Yeah, but that throat's very wide, because you can have 3 lanes there. If one was waiting to turn one left, as you exit, it's got two lane widths, which is good, which helps us.
How did you determine the height of each pylon on the west and the east?
Well, number one, we still want one higher than the other one. I think that's important. And just from sight lines, as you drive down there, on both sides, mostly on the east side with Columbus, there's a lot of different signs. We've got mature trees on both sides, and with trucks and everything, at the height that one is, it does get lost in the shuffle if there's semis coming this way and you're on here. So the higher sign, we felt, got a little bit above the mess, but also got rid of the thing that's been there for 50 years. So we felt the 30 and the 25 was a good compromise to make what we feel safety and identify dealerships, but make a 50% reduction in these overall sign heights.
Okay, thank you. Nick, anything?
No.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
I think we're good.
Go first. Go back to the original one.
We have to
Yeah, we go back to the original.
First one?
Yeah.
Is the board interested in private deliberations at all?
I was just going to wonder that myself.
Okay, there's one point I would like to discuss.
Okay, I move that we move into private deliberations.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Pax. Those voting, Mr. Treves,
Yes,
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
All right, we'll move into private deliberation.
we'll try not to take
I move that we return to public session.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
I just would like to say, we do believe that this is a unique application with unique problems and solutions. And I believe that the decision we make will show you how we've considered that, how we've taken that into consideration. Typically, high numbers like this in variance percentage would be outside of something acceptable, but we tried to look at all of the uniqueness of this site. So, based on the testimony this evening and the factors we consider, I move to approve case number VA-CU 2436 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, seeking a conditional use from Orange Township zoning resolution Article 22.04A to allow for the construction of a monument sign in an area zone planned commercial and office district with the condition, if possible, that they add the street number to the sign for fire identification.
I think as far as address numbers go, usually that's something that's dictated by the fire department. There is, I believe, a mention in the zoning code that that be displayed somewhere visibly. I don't think I've ever,
If I may explain,
sure, yeah.
since there are two businesses with similar-looking buildings, one on each side of the street with similar-looking signs, when you consider that the Columbus Fire Department, which is on Lozelle Road, could run mutual aid on a large commercial building, how do they know which building to go to on a building that's 200 feet from the street if there isn't a street number out at the road?
That'd be a new condition for me, but it's up to the board to ultimately decide if they wanted to apply a condition. Yep. So, yep. If I have a motion, if there's a second.
I'll second.
Okay. So a motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting? And that's subject to the condition as described by Mrs. Ross to add the address nameplate to the sign.
And I did say if possible, because if Nissan tells you exactly what your sign has to say and they would not allow it, that we can't legislate them to do it.
Sure. Yeah. As described, if that's a possible addition for the address on the sign itself. So have that as Ms. Ross making the motion, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Okay, the next variance. Based on the testimony received this evening and the factors we consider, I move to approve case number VA-CU 2436 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution, section 2204A3B, to increase the permitted height of the monument sign from 15 feet to 30 feet in an area zone planned commercial and office district.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Pax. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
let's see, Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Give you a break.
Thank you.
Based on the factors we discussed tonight, I'm sorry.
We gotta do two.
Yeah.
Monument sign,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we didn't.
no.
Oh, my goodness.
is.
Yep, I
Got it? Okay.
Based on these factors, I move to approve case number VACU 24-36 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for monument sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution section 22.04A3D to increase the permitted display area, the monument sign per side from 64 feet to 99.4 feet in an area zone planned commercial and office district.
I'll second.
Just to be 100% clear, it was from 64 square feet to 99.4 square feet. So, is that correct, Mrs. Knapp?
Yes,
64 to 99, yes.
there wasn't a second square feet.
Yep, that's correct. So that was a motion made by Ms. Neff, seconded by Ms. Ross. Those voting, Mr. Treffs,
Yes.
Mrs. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, I do have, let's see, okay, this is number 3. I just want to keep everyone on the same page.
Based on our testimony received and the factors we consider, I move to approve case number VACU 2436 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution section 2204A3E to increase the permitted display of the sign from 128 feet to 198.8 square feet in an area zoned planned commercial and office district.
It's 128 square feet.
Yep, sorry about that.
I'm sorry, and it
That-
should be 128 square feet.
Yep,
Second?
motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Mr. Treffs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, for number 4, area variance request for wall sign A for the height. I did happen to see that this text appears to got crossed up. The 8 feet should be changed to 15 feet because that's the sign height allowed. And then the 30 feet should be that measurement of 23 feet and 5 inches. So again, 8 feet to 15 feet, and then that 30 feet should state 23 feet and 5 inches.
And that's number 4.
That's
Yeah, it's
number
number
4.
You got it, yep.
Go ahead. You want?
Based on the factors we discussed this evening, I move to approve case number VACU 24-36 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution section 22.03C1 to increase the permitted sign of this permitted height of the sign identified as wall sign A in this report from 15 feet to 23 feet 5 inches in an area zoned planned commercial and office district.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Neff, seconded by Mr. Treffs. Those voting, Mr. Treffs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Any changes to number 5?
No, I don't think so.
Don't think so. 15.
Looked ahead, and they are consistent with the staff report earlier with the staff analysis.
Okay, based on the testimony received and the factors we considered, I move to approve case number VACU 2436 for the property located 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution section 23.03C1 to increase the permitted height of the sign identified as wall sign B in this report from 15 feet 0 inches to 25 feet 0 inches in an area zone planned commercial and office district.
Second?
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Mr. Treffs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on these factors, I move to approve case number VACU 2436 for the property located at 3600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, an area variance for a monument sign from Orange Township zoning resolution.
I apologize, that monument sign should state wall sign. I'm so sorry. Area variance for a wall sign.
Wall sign?
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Do you want me to start again?
It's up to you, or you can continue from wall sign.
Wall sign from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22.03C1, to increase the permitted height of a sign identified in this report as wall sign C from 15 feet 0 inches to 23 feet 5 inches in the area zone plan commercial and office district, PC. That's it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Trev, seconded by Ms. Ross. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax.
Yes.
Ms. Nev,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. And then same difference, it looks like
Yeah.
my typo continued. That should state wall sign for wall sign D.
Based on factors in testimony this evening, I move to approve case number VACU-24-36 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio. Area variance for a wall sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution section 22.03C1 to increase the permitted height of the sign identified in this report as wall sign D from 15 foot 0 inches to 22 feet 11 inches in an area zone plan commercial and office district, PC.
Second?
So a motion was made by Mr. Pax, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes?
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax.
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, we're on to the electronic message centers.
Based on the factors discussed this evening, I move.
We have a question for them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're okay? All right. Please continue.
Based on the factors we discussed this evening, I move to approve case number VACU 2436 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, to allow an area variance for an electronic message center sign identified in this report as EMC left side, when it is not permitted in an area zone plan commercial and office district.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Neff, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on our discussion and these factors, I move to approve case number VACU 24-36 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, to allow an area variance for electronic message signs, EMC, sign identified in this report as EMC Center, when it is not permitted in a zone plan commercial and office district, PC.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Trev, seconded by Ms. Ross. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on the testimony heard and factors considered, I move to approve case number VACU 2436 for the property located at 8600 North High Street, Lewis Center, Ohio, to allow an area variance for an electronic message center, EMC, sign identified in this report as EMC right side when it is not permitted in an area zoned planned commercial and office district, PC.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. That is all for VACU 2436. Now I'll direct your attention to the next staff report and the first variance on there. Actually, that would be the conditional use.
Based on the testimony heard and the factors considered, I move to approve case number VACU 2437 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio, seeking a conditional use from Orange Township Zoning Resolution Article 24.04A to allow for the construction of a monument sign in an area zoned planned commercial and office district PC, with the condition that they add pre-owned or some version of that, as well as the street number to the sign, if possible.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve, subject to the conditions described by Ms. Ross, as that's possible, and that has been seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes?
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on our discussion and the factors that we've considered, I move to approve case number VACU 2437 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio. Area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township Zoning Resolution, Section 22.4A3B, to increase the permitted height of the monument sign from 15 feet to 25 feet in an area zone planned commercial and office district PC.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Trevs, seconded by Mr. McCoy. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes?
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on the factors we discussed tonight, I move to approve case number VACU 24-37 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township Zoning Resolution, Section 22.04A3D, to increase the permitted display area, the monument sign per side, from 64 square feet to 69 square feet in an area zone planned commercial and office district.
A second.
All right, motion made by that was by Ms. Neff, seconded by Ms. Ross. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes?
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Based on the factors discussed this evening, I move to approve case number VACU 24-37 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a monument sign from the Orange Township Zoning Resolution, Section 22.04A3E, to increase the permitted display area of the sign from 128 square feet to 138 square feet in an area zoned planned commercial and office district.
Second. Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Motion made by Ms. Neff, seconded by Mr. Pax. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes?
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
And the next
Motion
one
carries.
has wall sign versus monument sign, the next two.
Yep, just like the last report. So that would be a wall sign. Yep.
I move to approve, based on these factors, I move to approve case number VACU 2437 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio. area variance for a wall sign from Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22.03C1, to increase the permitted height of the sign identified as wall sign A in this report from 15 foot 0 inches to 18 foot 0 inches in the area zone plan commercial and office district PC.
Second?
Okay, heard Ms. Neff. Motion made by Mr. Trev, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Last but not least, based on the testimony heard and the factors considered, I move to approve case number VACU 2437 for the property located at 10140 Columbus Pike, Lewis Center, Ohio, area variance for a wall sign from the Orange Township zoning resolution, section 22.03C1, to increase the permitted height of the sign identified as wall sign B in this report from 15 feet 0 inches to 17 feet 1 inch in an area zoned planned commercial and office district PC.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Ms. Neff. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross.
Yes.
Mr. Pax.
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
Motion carries. Last but not least. Right, that does it.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
Yes.
Good luck with the project.
I'm gonna say, you're free to go.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
It was nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with the project.
Good luck.
Thank you for making this look nice.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
That Rainier Construction, that company, that's all they do.
But that's not
Oh, that's
part of the
outside.
official.
I know, isn't,
Are we
are there
approving
that
any
many
minutes
car
tonight,
places
or no?
that they can keep going, they can keep them so fast?
Okay.
Like all the ones on Polaris, you know, all of those are down there in the port. Those are all the same. Gosh, gee, praise my.
So one of the administrative housekeeping items was the minutes. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Ms. Neff. We had two sets of minutes. They go back to October and November, and I did get some corrections. They were all just spelling or grammatical capitalization. So I was able to incorporate those into both of those sets of minutes. If anyone had any items for discussion, you're welcome to bring that up, or we can go ahead with a vote.
So we vote.
Let's go. Yeah, October is the first one for your motion.
What was the date of that? Was it the 14th? Because we don't have a,
We don't have
An
the
agenda.
in front of us.
so if you can give me those two dates, I'll,
Yeah,
October 17th and November,
Thank you.
okay. I move that we approve the minutes of October 17th, 2024, and November 14th, 2024, as amended.
Can we do them both together?
I've heard them separate.
Okay, then let's go with, I move to approve the BZA minutes of October 17th, 2024, as amended.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax.
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Abstain?
and Mr. McCoy.
Abstain.
Okay, that still passes.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of November, BZA minutes of November 14th, 2024, as amended.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Trevs. Those voting, Mr. Trevs,
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Pax?
Yes.
Ms. Neff?
Abstain.
And Mr. McCoy?
Abstain.
All right,
Thank you.
same result. Motion carries. That's the last of the housekeeping, and we will forward the future minutes along to you once those become available.
Okay. Now is there a motion to adjourn?
So as far as the rest of the evening, we do have Julie Donnan here. This is all a public training, so
Yeah.
there's, I'm just basically going to hand off to Julie to go through that training.
Do we adjourn
Do we
first or
adjourn?
no?
We don't
No,
need-
because it's still a public
Is it
meeting.
still, so the meeting, no, that's okay. So the meeting can, should still stay open because
Okay.
it is part of the public meeting. If you want to release your court reporter, you certainly can do
Yeah,
that, since the
you don't have
hearings
to stay for this.
unless you'd
No
like to learn
objection.
about zoning.
She's like, what? Good for you.
All right.
You're good.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
we're
good to go. Thank you.
All right, I've got some materials for you folks.
Really, can't imagine.
Can't imagine, right? There's some faces I recognize, some newer faces, but I'm Julie Donnan. I'm an attorney with Bursch Johnson & Griggs. As I said on the record, we've represented you folks for several years now. It's always nice to be out here with you, not when you think you're gonna need me. This is hopefully the purpose of this will be to prevent the need moving forward. I also recognize that you folks have been at this for almost 2 hours. And I was speaking with Eric beforehand. There are a few ways we can handle this. One, I try to keep this to about an hour. I can condense as much as possible to try to keep it to 45. I also recognize that I want your brains as fresh as possible, so that, I mean, you guys have had a night already, and if you wanted to split this in half and maybe go 30 minutes and then another 30 minutes at a later meeting, I'm happy to do that. Again, whatever is best and will absorb the most from you folks is fine with me. Just don't want to dive in and start to have heads fall on the desks. So,
Can we do 30-30? Is anyone opposed to that?
I'm not opposed.
I'm not opposed if we can do that.
That's fine.
Just-
Can we scan this into an AI program and get one-page summary?
I was at
I'm
a,
joking, because
No.
I'm an attorney too, so.
when I was at a meeting today where someone was talking about, AI notes, and they basically, it was not a township, it was a private entity, but, and, volunteers, they're like, oh yeah, well, we have, AI note taker take our minutes. And, but they don't, we're worried they're not accurate. So, well, you have to read your minutes before you adopt them, but
Yeah.
I digress. Okay, we'll do 30 and 30. Eric, just make sure that we talk about the next meeting, so that way I actually show up next month or whenever is most convenient for you folks. But just wanted to at least walk through that. Let me get through. I want to see what would be a good halfway point. Okay, and don't worry, even if we were coming here, if I was starting on minute 1, we would not be going through each and every piece of paper, or every line on this. I give you more materials than you could possibly need. All right, well, I'm gonna start. I think I've got a good stopping point in mind, but it depends on how many questions you guys have and where we land in about a half hour. If you have questions, please just shout them out. Again, this is, I'm here for you and here to answer questions. Okay, in terms of what the training generally consists of, we give you an overview of what exactly is zoning, what's the authority for it. Which is very fun and exciting, and I will try to keep slim, especially at this late hour. We go through the organization and function of the BZA, what jurisdiction you have, how to go about making good decisions that hopefully will stand up to appeal in the event an appeal comes. And then we like to conclude things with some ethics training and that sort of thing, because believe it or not, you are subject to Ohio ethics laws, which is an important responsibility that you have. So, kind of starting at the top, what is zoning? And what is a township's authority to enact zoning? Townships are creatures of statute. They are, they only have the ability and the authority to do what is written in the Ohio Revised Code, or what can necessarily be implied therefrom. So Chapter 519 of the Revised Code says townships have zoning authority. Step one. All right, where can we point to? Chapter 519. It also outlines some of the, again, the limits of zoning and that type of thing. What is zoning? It is categorizing areas and districts of land into uses that make sense. And in addition to use restrictions, also, building structure, building heights, lot coverage, that type of thing. So some of the features as well as the uses that are constructed on property. Zoning's a police power. At the end of the day, the township is telling a property owner what they can and can't do with their property, which is an important, that's a pretty powerful tool, which means that also there needs to be reasonableness to the restrictions, there needs to be sense and that type of thing, because you are, at the end of the day, telling someone what they can and can't do with their property. I'm going to skip ahead to page 2, because I think that the statutory limitations are important. Again, the BZA, your function is very different from the zoning committee's function, which is, the zoning commission and trustees are kind of on one zoning track, and you folks are on a different zoning track. So you might not necessarily see these things, but I think it's important for, again, as the overall educational process of what is township zoning, to be aware of some of the statutory limitations on zoning. So you're never going to see, or odds are you probably won't see some of these things come through. Townships cannot force the discontinuance of a, quote, lawful non-conforming use. So what's a lawful non-conforming use? That is, let's say I've got a fast food restaurant that was an approved, permitted use in a district, and township decides, you know what, we're changing the uses in this district, and fast food restaurants are no longer going to be permitted. Well, again, it's a property, I have property rights, and it would be pretty powerful if the township could say, guess what, your fast food restaurant now must shut its doors because we just decided that's the case. So you might hear grandfathering, that type of thing, but lawful non-conforming is the term of art. And again, at the end of the day, it is non-conforming. It is a non-conforming use or structure with the zoning resolution, but it's lawful because it was that way before the resolution changed or was adopted or that type of thing. And it makes sense. You need to account for those things, because otherwise the township could take away people's rights. This list, the statutory list, has some very interesting, I would just call them one-offs, but clearly it was a big enough problem that the General Assembly needed to call them out specifically. This next item is one of them. Zoning resolutions have to classify outdoor advertising as a business use. You have to permit advertising. Makes sense. If you've got a business, you need to be able to communicate to people where they are and that type of thing. You folks are very familiar with sign restrictions after sitting through these past 2 applications. Townships are not permitted, can't prohibit agricultural uses. And zoning as it relates to ag is basically a flow chart. And it's, again, at the top, it's townships can't prohibit ag uses. And then there's a list of exceptions and that sort of thing. But just in general, what you need to know is ag is kind of the third rail of zoning, and hopefully you guys probably wouldn't have too many ag questions, but I suspect your zoning department gets them more often than not. Telecommunication towers, except for telecommunication towers in residential districts, townships can't restrict public utilities or railroads. Again, those are just areas that you can't touch. Townships can't prohibit the sale of alcohol in areas that permit retail business, hotels, restaurants, etc. Townships can't prohibit permanently sited manufacturing homes, specifically in residential districts. These are the last two items on this list are actually pretty recent in the last couple of years. Townships can regulate. It's a limited ability to regulate, but townships do have the ability to regulate small wind and solar farms, as well as medical and now recreational marijuana facilities. So those are, again, some of the specific call-outs that limit and restrict the township's ability to enact zoning for some specific uses and structures. Okay, so for small wind and small solar facilities, those are, they're defined in statute, and they are limited to, I know on the solar side, it relates to the wattage, and small wind farm, I believe it has a similar metric of power, I guess.
Yeah,
And then
wattage again.
wattage, there we go. And anything that is outside of, but only small, again, the township can only regulate those small facilities. Anything that is outside of that small category, it goes to the Ohio Power and Siting regulatory body. So townships have limited authority just for certain facilities. Moving into creation and function of the BZA. So you are a quasi-judicial body. The zoning commission and the board of trustees, generally, when they are moving through their processes and procedure, they're acting, more often than not, they're acting in a legislative capacity. They are adopting law by amending the zoning resolution and that type of thing. They're amending the laws of the township, which is legislative, just like the General Assembly in Ohio, just like Congress at the federal level. You folks are being asked to act almost as a judge in a quasi-judicial capacity. You are a public body, which means you're subject to Public Meetings Act. Again, why you did not adjourn the meeting is because if we were to be having this discussion, if the meeting had been adjourned and we were having this discussion, then that is a violation of the Open Meetings Act, that pardon me, at least a quorum of the board having conversations and discussing BZA business, not in an open meeting, is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Joe, I was sensing a question. Do you have a question or? Okay, all right, perfect. And in open meeting, well, I'll get into that a little bit later. Something to keep in mind, this has been, I think it is easy to forget because we live in a world of reply all emails. So as a public body, again, you cannot have a quorum of the members can't have a conversation or discussion of any kind outside of a public meeting. That includes email correspondence as well. And so I know, Eric may send out the agenda, and it's easy for one person to ask a question and then for conversations to start going back and forth. So just something to keep in mind. That's a trap for the wary. The BZA could accidentally walk itself into an open meetings violation. Someone could say, hey, the BZA is having discussions outside of a public meeting, and that's a problem. So something to keep in mind. It can be easy to do with reply all emails. The exception to the fact that business and conversations have to take place in an open meeting is that the BZA is permitted to enter into private deliberations, which I know you're all very well familiar with. Private deliberations are different than executive session, which the trustees, the board of trustees, they're able to go into private deliberation, or I'm sorry, executive session for a set number of reasons. BZA, what's the difference between executive session and private deliberations? Private deliberations, because you're acting in a quasi-judicial manner, think of a judge, hearing the evidence and deciding, rendering a case. They have that in their mind. They go through the analysis in their mind. Obviously, the five sitting on the board at any one time unless you have powers I'm not aware of, you don't have telepathy and can't have these conversations except behind closed doors, because there has to be one final decision, obviously. You can't piecemeal a decision of some sort. So that's the reasoning behind that. At the end of the day, you're acting in judicial capacity, and you need to have one voice when your decision ultimately comes out. Obviously, you can't make any decisions in private deliberation. You have to exit, come out here, and then render the decision. Folks sometimes get a little caught up when being in private deliberations and everyone's asking, well, where are you on everything? And what I say is, when you have conversations in there about where you are and that type of thing, I call it more of a temperature check. No one's making a motion to render a decision. Theoretically, someone could say, this is where I am, and come out here, and when the motion comes, they could change their mind. They could vote a different way. But again, sometimes I know I've been in situations where in private deliberations, people can just get a little squirrely when people start talking about how they feel like they're going to vote. So just wanted to mention that.
So as point of procedure on that also, so when we go into private deliberations, that's when we move for adjournment,
Well,
or just move to go to private deliberation, and then when we're coming back in, we
have to-
Go back
make a
to open
motion to
session. Mm-hmm.
open session.
Correct.
That's the terminology, the proper terminology.
Correct. And be careful on, if you adjourn a meeting, theoretically, you have closed that hearing, which if you may, so don't you may unintended, you might not plan on doing that, but so just, I do want to mention that I would only adjourn a meeting if you are, or a hearing, if you are done with the business, or done with public comment and that sort of thing. I'll hit on a few additional items, just kind of some clarifying points. Sometimes the board is not ready to make a decision, and so there's a difference between continuing an application and tabling an application. If you continue an application to a time, date, place certain, that means that the township doesn't have to republish notice of that hearing. You basically say, okay, we're gonna meet back here on February 16th at 6 o'clock and call it a day on that. If an application is tabled, the township will then have to renotice the hearing, and it just takes longer, that type of thing, and costs more money, frankly. Give me just a second. I've gotten this question a few times recently, and is in terms of continued applications. So there are situations where, if this board had continued one of the applications you had in front of you today, and at next month's hearing, you pick up where you left off, but maybe Stacy isn't there, and maybe you hadn't been here today, and so you're serving in Stacy's place. I have board members who get uncomfortable, like, well, can I hear this application? Because I wasn't here for part one, so what do I do? And what I would say, if that situation happens where you're sitting for an application that was continued, you didn't hear part one, but you're here for part two, what I would say is, if you feel that you can get caught up to speed, so that way if it is time to make a decision, you feel prepared and educated on the application, then it's okay that you weren't there for the first one. So how do you get caught up to speed? Review the transcript. I think you guys put this on YouTube, review the hearing on YouTube. And then I would also say, on the record, because the applicant may say, well, I don't know who that person is, who are you? I would say on the record, I was not here the last time, however, I read the transcript, I watched the video, I am fully up to speed, capable, and ready to participate and make a decision on this application. Just an aside, because that is a procedural item that just has come up a few times and can be a bit clunky. All right. You are required to adopt rules and processes and procedures. I think this was your organizational meeting, so you folks are familiar with all of that, and I like to see that, again, that you adopted your rules and regs, which is important. Moving into the jurisdiction of the BZA, what is your job? What are the things that you will hear? There are 4 things that you can possibly hear. Realistically, you're gonna hear 3, and if you hear 4, then I'm sure I will be here. Like, really, that's just the way it is. So you are able to hear appeals, authorize variances, grant conditional zoning certificates, and revoke an authorized variance or conditional zoning certificate for the extraction of minerals. And I don't know how many extraction of mineral operations you guys have in Orange Township. Probably not many. So, appeals, variances, conditional uses, that's realistically what you're seeing. Appeals, what's an appeal? If Eric, Robin, the other zoning team, the zoning team goes out and says, your fence is in violation, your fence doesn't meet setback, your fence is too tall, your fence is a problem. That owner or party in interest can say, I disagree with what you're saying. My fence meets the zoning resolution, or your determination is wrong. Well, they have 20 days to appeal that decision, or to request an appeal, and that appeal would come in front of you. I don't know, have you guys had any appeals recently?
I'm gonna say, I can't ever remember an appeal
Okay.
coming in front of us.
And sometimes how they not actually come about, but staff may have had a preliminary conversation with someone saying, hey, you either need, like, you're in violation or you need a variance. And so there may very well have been some variances that have come in front of you that, the other option would have been an appeal. But again, I'm trying to think of, an appeal on a situation, I gave the example of like the fence not being, the building standards, the area standards, that's a pretty rare situation where you see an appeal. It's often use, where there's a disagreement of, I'm not using my property in violation, and you're saying I'm operating in violation of a use restriction. So, but that's good that you haven't had too many of those. Conditional uses and variances, I know you guys are very familiar with those as well. So conditional uses are not permitted uses. They are items that the trustees have put into the zoning resolution as a way of signaling, look, we can see a situation where these uses make sense in this district. But there are also times, we don't want to put it as a permitted use because we think there could be situations where the impact on the surrounding area is great, or a particular project just doesn't work. Which is why it's conditional. And so if they have listed a conditional use and somebody wants that, they're going to come in front of you, and you're going to use your judgment to review the factors and determine if it's an appropriate use or not. I know, was that towards the end of last year, I was out here for home occupation conditional use. Home occupations are they're frequently conditional uses, because you could see a situation of, all right, we do want to encourage, the township wants to encourage people to be able to work out of their homes. There may be some business models where, an employee would be okay, some deliveries would be okay, the impact on the surrounding neighborhood isn't so bad, or will change the characteristics, that type of thing. And so that's the trustees have signaled to you that, look, use your good judgment, reviewing the factors that outline for home occupation, and if you believe it's appropriate, approve the conditional use.
I have a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
I think we heard this maybe at our last meeting, and I hadn't ever caught it before, that I always thought that a conditional use, once approved, stayed with the property. And we heard at I think maybe our last meeting, or the one before that, that we could put the condition on there that it is only, and I wish we had known that before.
So and I'm gonna go.
So which one is,
So, and when I was out here, I think we had that, some type of semblance of that conversation. And the answer is, that it depends on what's in your zoning resolution. If your zoning resolution is silent on, does the conditional use stay with the land or not, then the default is, if you approve it and don't carve it out, then it stays with the land. In preparing for tonight, your zoning resolution for your conditional uses, I believe, maybe it's just with respect to home occupations, actually says that, well, give me just a second and let me confirm. I want to make sure I wasn't looking at a different zoning resolution today. 7-2. So again, just wanted to make sure, the default of your zoning resolution is actually that unless you specifically say it's permanent and runs with the land, then the default is if it's sold, if it's conveyed, then the conditional use terminates and someone would have to come in and,
okay, so we're okay, we don't have to add that?
correct.
Okay, very
Correct.
good. My other question is,
Yes.
in the past, I've just, with some circumstances in my neighborhood, I felt that our zoning staff was handcuffed as to what they could actually do about a conditional use that was actually against our zoning code.
Okay.
And are they held to a different, who decides what kind of information the zoning staff can look for to find if this is truly a conditional use that's being within a residence?
So was this a situation where a conditional use was approved and so there was no conditional use approved? Okay. So, and I'm guessing a home occupation, since you're saying. So there are a few things, and home occupations can be very difficult. I would suspect there are a lot of people who are operating basically a home occupation and don't have a permit because theoretically someone could have a home occupation that does not have any employees, does not have any traffic, no deliveries, nobody would know. And so I think that, and Eric and I had kind of a similar conversation, at the end of the day, those people are in violation of the zoning resolution. However, on the other hand, it is home occupation, the reason someone gets a home occupation is to ensure that I'm trying to think of how to say this. Home occupation permits are designed to ensure that there's limited impact with respect to traffic, employees, just the noise, the overall burden on the surrounding community. So that's kind of that's the spectrum of where you are. What I would say is if zoning staff thinks that there is a violation, they'd have to investigate. The risk with, it can be difficult to prove something. In terms of process and procedure, they'd have to gather evidence that this home occupation is actually happening. And if it is kind of stealthy, it's difficult for them to know. And even if a neighbor looks and is like, listen, I know that they're doing X, Y, and Z, they still have to prove it. And that's the difficult part. And if they issue a violation, that property owner can appeal to you folks and basically say, look, they didn't have the evidence to prove that I'm doing anything wrong, or this is what's going on, and that type of thing. So it's tough because I'm sure that there are plenty of people who don't have a home occupation in particular, because it's
So-
easy to kind of hide.
Can neighbors complain to the township and then they research it, but it's still kind of tricky?
Yes, yeah. So I think Orange operates mostly off of a complaint-based.
Yeah.
So that's important because again, they drive down the street, unless there's a sign that says, Sally's Beauty Home Occupation, they're not gonna know.
But
And
there's
so-
not a different set of criteria when investigating something like that, other than any other?
Correct.
Okay,
Any other
I just felt
violation.
like they were really handcuffed.
And it can be it can be difficult to, I don't know the specifics, but it is, a home occupation is a little different because it's going on inside of the structure and it's hard to know what exactly is happening in there. And unless there's, advertising or they're putting it on Facebook that it's, my business LLC, and where is it operating out of,
Yeah.
like my home address, that type of thing. It just can be difficult, but. Any additional questions on home occupations or conditional uses? Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that about the code, because that makes me feel better.
Okay. One additional item on conditional uses, you are able to attach conditions to them. So, again, we'll kind of stick with the home occupation side of things. If someone wants to operate a business, but you're concerned, look, we're worried you're gonna store materials on the outside of your house, or we're worried about, you're gonna have a tractor in the front yard, or I don't know, that type of thing. You can add reasonable conditions. Something to keep in mind, though, is always, again, zoning staff's gonna have to enforce it, and so there are at times, you may want to put a restriction, but then the question becomes, but from a practical perspective, how is enforcement gonna actually occur? Moving into variances. So at the end of the day, a variance authorizes you folks to do something different, or to approve something different than the standards of the zoning resolution. There are two different types of variances. I do want to mention this because, again, things just kind of continue to come up, and I've been at a few BZAs recently, and they must have just been getting a ton of variances because it really is grinding their gears, and they're saying, well, I don't want to approve it because it's not what our code says. Our zoning resolution says this, and I don't want to approve it. And understand frustration and all of that, but try to remember at the end of the day, that's truly the BZA's job, is you have this niche role of everything that comes before you is not gonna be, it's not, that's the whole reason someone's here. And I know it can be frustrating, especially if somebody is asking for forgiveness rather than permission of, that can be, completely understand that level of frustration. But at the end of the day, that's part of that. Again, that's a fundamental part of this board is making those determinations. So, getting into the types of variances, there are two types: a use variance and an area variance. A use variance is just that. It is, I'm in a zoning district and I want to do something that's not a permitted use. And so in order to use my property the way I want to, I need to get this use variance approved, and I can do that. The standard for a use variance is incredibly high. It is much higher than an area variance. We'll get into the standards for both of those. But it makes sense because a use variance, at the end of the day, the reason it's so high is, well, if you want to use your property different, then you should rezone it. So is there a reason why you can't rezone it to a district that would permit you to use your property this way? So that's kind of, again, that's one of the ways to keep in mind of why is a use variance standard so high? Why is the threshold so high? Area variances, as I said, the standard is lower. and again, we'll go through the standards, but area variance relates more to the actual, again, building height, setback lines, more of the factual type of things. Again, there's a percentage that you can attribute to an area variance, that type of thing. Okay, moving into the actual standards themselves. So use variance, the standard is, quote, unnecessary hardship. And unlike an area variance, for a use variance, they have to meet all of the criteria. There is no flexibility. If the board, in going through its factors, says no to any of the factors, then they're done. Then the board should not approve. And this is on page 7. The factors that can be considered, and again, your zoning resolution outlines the factors, but I'm fairly confident they mirror what's on this paper. Is the property unsuitable for any of the uses permitted in the zoning resolution? That's a very, very high standard. You can't do anything else with it. You can't do anything else with it. Does the variance result from conditions unique to the property owner in question and not a result of the actions of the property owner? Is this a self-imposed hardship? I want to use my property a different way, not because of something that has been imposed on me, but because I want to do this. And if the answer is I want to, then no. Other factors also include whether the variance is minimum necessary to obviate the offending condition, whether the variance would be inconsistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning resolution, and whether the variance is substantial. But again, the first two factors, those are the ones that are incredibly difficult to get through. Realistically, I don't even know that I can give you a great example of a use variance because it's something that's just so unique and off the wall, and there's a reason why they can't rezone, basically.
So if we had a use variance, we would probably have you here.
I would recommend that, yeah. Yes. And I don't think that you guys, I have done a couple use variances recently, which has been very surprising. But I don't, yeah, you guys have had a couple area variances that, you had that pool fence.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so keep that in mind. Also, and you guys do a good job of this, but I have some townships that will mix up use variance and conditional use, and they're different things. Conditional use is not a use variance, or a conditional use variance. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that just is like nails on a chalkboard. All right, switching to area variances. So as I mentioned, the standard for an area variance is, oh, this will be perfect timing. We'll get through area variances and then we will press pause. So area variances, as I said, you dealt with several of them. If the sign height is supposed to be this tall and I want it to be higher than that, I need an area variance. The standard is practical difficulties, and one of the main reasons why the courts have said, look, the standards can be different between a use and area variance is because granting an area variance doesn't change the neighborhood characteristics. It doesn't, it's just not as big of a deal as opposed to permitting a use that is different from the standards. So you may have heard the Duncan factors, Duncan v. Middlefield factors, that's the case that the area variance standards come from. So something to keep in mind is that for an area variance, because it's practical difficulties, you do not have to meet all of the criteria. So and there's a longer list than the use variance criteria, but for an area variance, the applicant does not need to meet all of the criteria. And quite frankly, in Orange Township, I'll get to that. I will get to that example, but I use you guys in an example in my training. But we'll get through that. So I've listed the factors. I know you guys are very familiar with them. A couple things to call out. Whether the variance is substantial. It is substantial. That's generally 25%. But again, it can be a substantial variance and you can still approve it. because of all these other factors and because of the flexibility. So something to keep in mind. Again, 25% is substantial, but you have that ability to approve. So I think the example, again, they're non-exclusive, this list is non-exclusive, you can think of you can use other factors and that type of thing. The example that I think of frequently is, it was an Orange Township area variance, and basically the vendor, the contractor clearly committed fraud. Like, it sounded like he committed fraud among other things, but a situation where, you know, something goes up, something is built, and they're in here asking for forgiveness, and it's like, no, you do not meet any of these criteria except for at the bottom, whether the spirit and intent, you know, and substantial justice would be done by approving it, and that type of thing. You know, I think of that situation because it was like, you know, is the spirit and intent to make an innocent resident tear off half their house type of thing. So,
I wish we had a follow-up, because I think about that all the time and wonder what happened with that poor thing.
oh my gosh.
Hopefully there was a lawsuit in there.
Oh, that was horrible. But again, a great, for our purposes, a great example of, you know, using your judgment, and that sort of thing. And there is no single factor that controls, and that type of thing. So I'm gonna pause there and see if there are additional questions. I do have, so I think in part 2, where I'm gonna pick things up, we'll go through, hearing formalities. Again, you guys have a court reporter. I know you're good about making sure folks are sworn in, that type of thing, but we'll talk about, you know, hearing formalities. We'll talk about evidence and that type of thing. You know, you don't receive public comment. The zoning commission and the trustees get public comment. You folks get sworn testimony. We'll talk about decision-making and conclusions of fact, and that type of thing, basically walking through in the event you guys have something particularly contentious and you want to prevent you want your decision to stand on appeal. We will talk about, again, conflicts of interest and some ethical, your ethical obligations, believe it or not, and that sort of thing. But if there are additional questions, happy to answer. Or you can think about it, and then the next time we come here, if there are more questions, we can work through it all.
I'll ask this the next time, but on the ethics, I've had to take ethics training virtually every year I've been working.
Yeah, same.
Good. Are you in the public sector or private?
Ohio State University.
Okay, yeah. So it's similar.
Yeah, but for somebody that hasn't ever been through it, it's pretty weighty.
And it is in a forum where, you know, public records and, you know, public conversations and that type of thing, you don't want to accidentally walk into, and it's easy to, again, it's nothing particularly magical in my mind, and hopefully you guys will find the same, but if you don't know, then you don't know, and you may inadvertently walk into something, and nobody wants that, so. All right, well, that's the rundown.
Cool. Thank you
Appreciate it.
very much.
No
Thank you.
problem. Thanks I didn't see any heads hit the table, so nobody, you all appear to be awake for the most part, which is good.
Now we need to.
And I say, now we need to adjourn,
There you
right?
go. Absolutely.
Is there a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, we've adjourned. Now you can go ahead and hit the gavel. Thank you all. And we will have Julie back, by the way. I don't know.